My name is Helen Allen. I'm the executive director of the Winter Show. We are thrilled to have you here. This is our 72nd edition of the show. I think we've been in this glorious building for all but 4 years in our 72-year history. So I'd like to introduce our wonderful friend and partner, Jacqueline Terrebone, the editor-in-chief of Galerie Magazine. We've been working with Galerie for years and always have wonderful panels lined up with them. And so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jackie. Thank you so much for being with us, to our panelists.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's just the winter show has been extraordinary this year, as it is every. And thank you so much for being here today. So, we're here to talk about the art of alliance, creativity, and commerce through collaboration. And we have fantastic panelists all coming to us from very unique viewpoints that make this really exciting. Carolyn Dailey at the end is an author of a book, The Creative Entrepreneur, and I've been reading through it, poring over every page. It's really fascinating and talking about that intersection between creativity and commerce with some of the best minds in the field. So thank you for being here. And we have Daniela Kalmeyer, the fashion designer, who is one of the leading lights in fashion right now, and especially in New York fashion. So thank you. And Sarah Magnus, this is not our first panel together. We've done this before, who's an interior designer. She has such a specialty in historic and restoration as well. So thank you. And Michelle Okadoner, the artist,
You can
quite the
say we're
career.
friends.
We're very good friends. She's like a fairy godmother. I adore Michelle. So I'm happy to be here today with this fantastic group. And I was hoping that each of you could start off by just telling me a little bit about your practice and your creative process. And maybe, Michelle, you want to start that off for us.
My practice evolved. I started in the 60s and everything was very compartmentalized. And artists didn't expect to have careers. The words were not put together. You were expected either to teach or starve. I did the Ann Arbor Street Fair, and that was, I was about 19 years old. It looked like fun. It was fun. I made some money. I bought a kiln. I ended up with my own studio in a garage. And one thing led to another. So over the 60 years, step by step, brick by brick, I learned and, in a way, pulled out the weeds and made a pathway, because there was no pathway for artists. We hadn't hit the Andy Warhol bloom of what Arthur Danto so brilliantly called the aestheticization of commerce, of commercial consumerism. So, given that background, it's wonderful because I've had many collaborations with American heritage, European heritage, but really just started with a kind of innocence and wanting to work with my hands.
Thank you. And Sarah, how about your practice and what you're working on right now and what your process looks like?
My practice started about 15 years ago, and it focuses mainly on preservation and restoration work. And I fell into that really because I grew up in Texas, where we don't really know what preservation is so much. And living in New York was a great introduction for me to see historic structures and buildings. And it was a place that really meant a lot to me to be in a room like this, for instance, that truly was restored in the last few years to its original design. So most of my work focuses on that. But I also started a company about 8 years ago called the Palm Beach Atelier, and we focus truly on artisanal craft. And I have 5 partners that we each specialize in a different trade and within the decorative arts. And so that is part of the panel today for me to talk about being a part of that organization. But it's living in New York has been an amazing opportunity for me over all these years that I've been here. And to be amongst my other panelists is truly awe-inspiring because Each person has an amazing story to tell. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Daniela, can you tell us about your collection, your line, and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, so I started my brand Calmeyer almost 14 years ago. I grew up a lover of theater and dance. I was a competitive figure skater, and so costume was a very big part of my life. And so I actually began my career in pursuit of a costume design career. But at 16 years old, I got my first internship in fashion, and I realized how really beautiful it was to spend all of your time obsessing over the perfect fit and the way someone would wear it and the perfect color and the perfect choice of material. And I kind of shifted my attention and I ended up going to school for fashion design. And when I graduated, it was what I like to call the um, Barney's Co op era of contemporary fashion. So I had worked for beautiful couturiers and luxury brands, Alexander McQueen, young designers at the time like Proenza, Upper East Side staple called Luca Luca. And I really fell in love with luxury craft and the art of just making clothes that were beautiful and well made for people to wear for their everyday lives. And so when I moved to New York and it was sort of like the boom of contemporary fashion, I found that there was this big um, gap between contemporary aesthetic and luxury quality. And I wanted to close that gap. And so my brand since inception has been to close that gap, to make beautiful pieces that are with the craft and experience and expertise I've learned in luxury construction and beautiful hands and beautiful quality materials, but in a way that people can wear because I think that every woman, every person should have access to luxury pieces that withstand the test of time and that they can wear every day. So just making beautiful clothes that are as sort of well priced and accessible as possible.
Amazing. You definitely have a fan here. And Carolyn, for you, how did you come to write your book, The Creative Entrepreneur? What was a little bit of that path that brought you to that?
Well, it was a long path, and it was also a surprise. So that part of my career, I'm a complete beginner, and that's been really exciting. I started in the media. I started in television at CNN when Ted Turner, the founder, wanted to launch it in Europe. I was very lucky through freak events, which taught me a lot about saying yes and showing up and being places. I ended up getting my big lucky break working there, and then he started film channels, bought film studios, then merged it with Time Warner, which is HBO, Warner Brothers, Warner Music, et cetera, et cetera. So I really had the beginnings of my career very much in film and television. And then as the world shifted, as the internet became what it is today, all kinds of issues with intellectual property and things made people, and this was a big part of my job, was forming alliances across all the creative sectors. So suddenly I was working with people in fashion and design, et cetera, because that's such a core part of all creative expertise. So that's what I was doing. And then I left. I saw two things. I saw that the creative sectors are still kind of surprisingly siloed. They don't really mix that much. But I also saw that they really, really want to. And I also, especially, working in a movie studio and a music label, saw creative artists really struggle so much, kind of hand to mouth, constant battle, always trying to get their creativity made and into the world, and how difficult that was. So I started something called Creative Entrepreneurs, which was to kind of address both of those issues, of bring together a platform where people could come across the different creative sectors and also share, most importantly, role model stories. And that's what it turns out my book is about. Role models that show the behind the scenes for how great creativity gets into the world, because we all love creativity. That's why we're here and we're surrounded by so much of it. But the untold story I have found is like, how did that happen? Who's the person behind it? How did they actually get their creativity into the world? How did they build their creative life?
So that's what the book is about. And I was very lucky because the publisher, I don't think I could have ever gotten a book published if I tried to pitch one myself from what I've heard. But the publisher asked me to write it, DK Dorling Kindersley, Penguin Random House. And so that's what it became. And it's the story of 10 creative, to embarrass them, I call them creative icons. But I really believe they are across the creative sectors, so from music to architecture, design, fashion, hospitality, and it tells their really untold stories in the hope that that informs people, but also inspires them and shows them that they can do it too, because all these people came not at all from business backgrounds and just figured it out. So that's the mission of the book, is to inspire people.
That's great. It's an amazing book. Um, Michelle, you touched on this a little bit, but how much creativity and commerce have come together from when you began your career 60 years ago? And I'm interested to hear, like, what do you think about how they interplay now? What's important about that and how it's evolved?
Well, as said earlier, there was no fertile field, and so I had to figure it out. A dealer came from New York, Lee Nordness. He was commissioned by the Johnson and Johnson family, and he wanted a piece for an exhibition that was traveling, and he asked how much one of my works were, and I said $350. Sounded like a lot of money to me, and he bought all of them. And I said, gee, I made my first mistake.
Right.
So that's how I learned. I learned they were mentors for me, but the mentors were more about aesthetics. And also, my work has crossed the markets. It's decorative arts, it's design, it's fine arts. Everything, as my good friend Leila Vignelli once taught me, that she learned in Italy. They learned to make from a spoon to a building. So when you have such a individual path, you have to work harder to integrate. So, but it's been so joyful because one thing really has led to the next. For example, Ronaldo Shamask, who was working on architectural dresses, found something that looked like something that he would like, and he commissioned buttons for his outfits in 1990. And then that went to something to hold up the dress, and that went to a necklace, which then Christoffel put into production and now opened up in their exhibition in Musée des Arts Décoratifs. It's a long road, but it's really it's a road where you're carrying a lot of golden threads, and if you keep your hands busy, you can weave the different aspects of these fields together, which is why I like your book, because it is speaking of integration and not the kind of at which they have it here at the show. You see all of the ways of human creativity, all the endeavors, whether it's flat, whether it's you can wear it, whether you have to take it home and put it on the floor, whether you're lighting your room with it or sitting on it. It's all here at this kind of, I'm going to say, medieval gathering. We've been doing this a long time. These are more than things. This is a festival where people come. So that's, I think, maybe answers part of your question,
Right.
I hope.
And you spoke a lot about integration, Sarah. How are you integrating creativity and commerce with the atelier, and
So
what does
it-
that look like right now?
It's similar story in the sense that it really began when I was working in Paris because there's an artist in there who sadly recently passed away. His name is Louis Kahn, and um, I've known him almost 20 years, and I've commissioned all different types of artwork with him and furniture, decorative items, and I just cherished that connection with him so much that I wanted to do an exhibition with him in Paris to show off his work that we've done collectively. And really, I did it because I wanted other designers to commission him to work, but I also wanted to talk and advocate about my interaction with him, just that beautiful collaboration that happened over each object that we made. And over time, after that show during Maison, I thought, where could we do this in the United States that it would be celebrated in a similar fashion? And I called my friends that I've known a long time that have family run businesses focused on different types of decorative craft. One is Hyde Park Molding, which is a premier plaster and gilding company here in Long Island. They work all over the United States. Rink is a Parisian heritage family run business. They're 300 years old, uh, and they focus more on marquetry and millwork. And Sacco Carpet is a bespoke carpet company based in New York and London. And then McKinnon and Harris is another partner which focuses on outdoor furniture, but they're a family run business out of Richmond, Virginia. And I purposely asked each one because each has one different element of craft that they specialize in, but each company also has an internal apprenticeship program where they educate younger people to learn their craft and they bring them through the process. And so we collectively as a group formed this company and we based it in Palm Beach, Florida, because we thought there's a lot of people there that will appreciate this type of idea. And we travel the world. And so we have 6 events a year, and a lot of the images that I put up are all of the places that we've gone as a group together. And the last amazing trip that we did was to Versailles for the campus school that was created by Macron 3 years ago. And it will be the future, I think, for so many other countries to follow their example on how they educate their population, but people that really want to focus on decorative arts. And as a commerce, that will lead to commerce. So we really are a group of advocates. We do it all really pro bono. We do it because we love it. We don't make anything off of it. We do it just because we care. And it's been so rewarding in every way for each of us. So, yeah, commerce will come later.
That's great. And then in fashion, I mean, I feel like that's a creative field that has definitely been about commerce for a while now, but mostly in fashion businesses, there's like the creative one and then the one that handles all the business and, they stay in their lanes. How does that function under your label?
Well, I'm both.
Okay.
And I think in my case, they work really well hand in hand. And I think that that's really because for me, it was never really about creating a product that the end goal is to see it on a runway or to see it in an editorial in a magazine or to see it on a red carpet. For me, the end goal is the person who wears it and how they reach towards it in their closet, how many times they wear it. I mean, one of my favorite quotes that um, was written about me or the brand was we had done a special commission for a bride, and we specifically designed this outfit to be something that she could wear after the wedding. And she came to me a few years later and said, I was wearing the pants because I love them, and I was holding my 2-year-old son, and he spilled spaghetti sauce all over the white pants. And I said, that's the greatest compliment you could give my clothes because it means you are wearing them in the most important moments of your life. And so I'm always thinking about what are the problems that I'm solving for the customer. My customer is my muse, and so I think it is the one is not true without the other. I can't create without the commerce or the end goal. And I think that was really like what propelled my business forward is, we started what I would most of my peers would consider very small and very quiet, but slowly but surely we were selling one dress, and that one dress, the profits from that made two more dresses, and we sold those two dresses, and the profits from those two dresses made four more dresses, and that is how I've built. So it's always funny for me, like now when we've received awards and, we're in the press all the time and we've had amazing press pieces, for people to come around and say, "You're blowing up." And for us to say, well, we actually built a really strong foundation with very deep roots long before you started seeing the leaves blooming.
That's incredible. I love that. I'm so happy for you. As you continue to bloom. And Carolyn, I feel like in creativity, there's a lot of talk about the big break moment, and here's the mentor that got me there. In speaking to the icons in your book, was there sort of a thread that tied those all together, that you saw kind of these same stories bubbling up, and what were some of the most interesting ones around that?
Definitely. And what was so interesting was their story, as opposed to, just to give a kind of shout out to this, as opposed to other career paths and other careers where it's pretty clear what you should do. It's got a kind of well-worn path. In creativity, that's really not the case. And so that's one of the reasons I feel so strongly about telling these role model stories, so that people can understand, this mystery of how did somebody build this life in architecture or in design or whatever. Um, so because of that, though, all of the stories tend to be so different, like completely different. Some people went to, I'm just thinking, Andy Harris, who's the producer of The Crown. No background in television. He just got his foot in the door. I mean, that's a big running theme. Just getting out there, getting your foot in the door and figuring it out. So what was so interesting was that all of the stories were so completely different and original and unique. And yet there are these threads that went through all of them. So, well, Nile Rodgers, who's the musical legend, his background's just unbelievable. He talks about his parents, who he says were the nicest people in the world, but they were heroin addicts. And because of that, he was moving school all the time. This was all in New York City. This is all downtown. And so he was always in a new school, and they would put him in the band, whatever instrument that they needed. So he always was going from one instrument to the next. Well, because of that, he could orchestrate by the time he was 12 years old, meaning he knew how to compose and how to play any instrument. So he built on that. Then he got, which I always think is very amusing, and so does he, his first lucky break was at Sesame Street, which, who knew Sesame Street had this really impressive traveling band, that other major talent came out of, like Luther Vandross and a bunch of other people like that. Great. So he got, like, that's his first like paper check he got. So he was really excited about that. But he kept kind of doing his thing in the background. He was playing at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, and he met his bandmate that he had then for the rest of his career until Bernard passed away. But they just loved each other and clicked, and ended up, they didn't have money to make a demo. This is in the days of vinyl. This is in the 70s. They didn't have the money to go into a production suite. So they had a friend, and this is another thing which is a major issue or theme for all of them. I hate the word networking, and so do they, but it's really your community and the people that you know, and out of that community come your mentors and your partners and everything. So because of that, Nile, they knew all the downtown DJs. And so one of those guys worked as a day job in a production studio. So he said, you know what, I think, I know what happens. They clear out of there at like 7 o'clock at night. So let's just go there. We'll pay the elevator man to keep quiet, and we'll go into the production studio and we'll make a demo. So they did. Great. So that's fantastic. And they're going to shop it around to the music labels, because that's the big thing in music. You want a record deal. And so his DJ friend called him one night and said, "You've got to get down to this club. You've got to come down." He said, "Well, why? Why? What's happening?" And he went down there. And so the DJ, their first song that they did was Dance, 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 which is, dance, 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 if you remember that song. And so Niall walked in, and at first the bouncer wasn't going to let him in. And so his friend waved him over and said, "No, let this guy in." And so he said, I couldn't believe it. He said the DJ was his friend, playing this song, and people were screaming, like on the dance floor, screaming, going crazy. And then the song was over, and they'd scream to have it played again. And this happened sort of like 6 times or whatever. And so because of that, one thing led to another, but they got their record deal. But it was perseverance in, people wanted he and his partner to change the kind of music they were doing. They wanted it to be more commercial, the people that they were talking to about potentially getting a record deal, and they really stuck to what they loved. And also, it's a story about partnership, which also I'm sure comes up for all of you. But for example, Matthew Slotover, who started Freeze art fairs and Freeze magazines, they're co-founder stories and partner stories. And so that's another really interesting theme, is when you work with someone and figure out what your skills are and their skills, and if it works, that's a beautiful thing. So those are just, that's like a breakthrough story, also the kind of partner story, and sticking to your creative vision, and that's where you do your best.
Amazing. And Danielle, how about for you? Was there a mentor along the way, or someone that really stuck out in when you were learning and coming up?
I think I had a couple of like key moments of the brand. I did have a mentor when I was starting, and it was there was like a hiring freeze in New York when I was starting, and I had amazing work experience, like I said, like McQueen and Proenza and Luca, and I'd come out of a honorable mention from the London College of Fashion, and then moved back to New York, and nobody was hiring. So I would take any job I could. I worked freelance for a couturier, and I worked freelance for HSN, QVC, and
Okay.
Nat Geo. And I just, as long as I was working, I was happy. And, this was sort of like my big awakening about fashion and what I believed in and what I wanted to be creating versus, what was available out there and where I wanted to work. And I remember going to a mentor of mine who was my boss at Proenza, and said, I just like, you know, I could get a job here or there, but I don't even really believe in it. And I had worked for a contemporary company who will not be named, but I remember the loop closed for me when she handed me a stack of tears, what it's called, like inspiration, and said sort of like iterate based on this. And in it was a design I had done at McQueen. So it was like the loop had already closed, and I remember going to my mentor and said, like, I just don't really want to be doing this if I don't believe in it, and this is really what I believe in, and this is what I want to be doing. And I think that, you can use your expertise, you can use your knowledge about material and fit and function and fashion to make beautiful clothes that are not exorbitantly expensive. And he said, you're totally right, and I think you should do it. Now, he didn't give me the money to do it, and he didn't help me run the company. So I think throughout like the 14 years of the ups and downs of my brand, I've had so many mentors, but and all of them have had kind of pivotal influence in my career in one way or another, whether it was someone who introduced me to I just really believe in like fate and the domino effect of networking and who you know and how you put yourself out there and the community that you build. And so sometimes my mentors have actually been my peers. It's like the women who are in amazing careers who like maybe their career is not in fashion or even in a creative field, but just watching their pursuit of excellence and success gives me sort of like a purpose of like, well, that's who I want to be dressing. And that's their life is what I'm designing for. So yes, I've had mentors and many, but they've taken different shapes and sizes and some for longer periods and some for just a fleeting moment, to say, yes, I believe in you and you should do this. But
Yeah,
you have to
keep
believe in
going.
yourself too.
And Sarah, for you, was there someone or a network along the way that pushed you? I think,
Every day. I mean,
yeah,
I feel fortunate enough that everyone that I've worked for, I still talk to uh, quite regularly, actually. So thinking that New York would be quite daunting to move to of a large place, but it's quite small. The longer you live here, it gets really small. A lot of people in this room I know really well, so and I've known a long time, and a lot of what we do with the atelier is truly about education and advocacy, but every single person in this room now um, really contemplate and think about those that have influenced the things that you've done. And you never know. New York is such an amazing place. You can turn the corner and meet your future spouse or, meet the most creative person you've ever met in your life. I think that's what makes New York so amazing. And I cherish all of those moments that I've had over the years here and even from my childhood. But New York is a magical place. And each person here I didn't know well on the panel. And I will continue to develop those relationships over time. And so I think mentors, yes, I have many, and I'm very fortunate for them. And I think more and more people we meet, the more connected we are, and the decorative arts can continue and grow and be
yeah.
great. So
Michelle, I mean, your art spans so many different design and jewelry and all of these different decorative arts that you've touched over the years. Have there been collaborators or people who have commissioned you that have pushed you in a different direction?
There's been many. I was watching the slideshow, in fact, while I was listening to Carolyn. I worked recently for Janori. I've worked at Nymphenburg. I've worked for Steuben, been up to Corning. It's been very exciting. But what really, because there was no one path, like a fashion industry is pretty monolithic in a way. It's not like you, or even to be an architect, you go to a certain office, and to be an artist, you're supposed to be alone in a room, I suppose. When I came to Detroit in my 20s, there were three women who the men all did go to offices. It was very segmented. So there were three women. One of them uh, had worked for Yamasaki, and he had designed her house, and she had helped with the interiors and was hoping he would take her on. And he didn't, but she became a great collector. The second one was married to the first director of Cranbrook, Zoltan Shepeshi, and she opened a gallery nearby, and she had the ceramics from the famous Knotzlers, and she had the English jewels from Andrew Grimma from the Royal Academy. And I used to stop there all the time. The third one was Gertrude Castle, and her husband was in the steel business and kept her busy with the gallery. And I showed at the gallery along with Al Loving, who has a painting in the here. It was so nice to run into his painting today and see it was sold and going back to Detroit. So the three of them each provided a mentorship and a safe place, and like they took me under their wing, literally. And so it was that kind of um, stability, kind of an unusual sisterhood that really gave me the ballast to move to New York, which still there were, Guerrilla Girls said there were 3% of women in the galleries in 1986. I came in 81. So I was still functioning audaciously in a man's world. In fact, I won prizes that when I was in graduate school, that I was the only woman in the program, and there were 6 men, and they actually said, "You should not have entered because we will have families to support and you will marry." So the you can't imagine the different world that, but happily, I loved what I was doing. I liked them. They weren't, nothing was in my way. And these three women in three different ways sort of, they never said anything. We didn't talk about these things. There was no women's movement. It's funny. Yet they gave me a sense of acceptance for who I was and what I was doing. And I think about them often. And they set me on my way. And I was able to come here. And John Copeland, who had been editor of Art Forum and a great photographer, he turned to a friend I went to college with, and he said, 250,000 artists are coming to New York every year. How did she get a show? How I got a show was Gertrude Castle got in touch with Sam Hunter, the critic. Florence Barron introduced me to people. Peggy DeSalle. I had wonderful books and treasures that I brought with me that people were interested in because she was a great, great collector. And so that was really invaluable. And I feel I passed that on all the time. I remember that. And I have such great gratitude and even, it's a lot of love given to me inside.
It's beautiful. Well, watching these slides and I see your work at the Miami airport, and I just feel like I'm flying out of the wrong terminal. I never get to see it, so I'm buying my next flight to Miami based on your artwork. I think that the show out there, it's so beautiful. There are so many things to inspire. What have you seen, Michelle, that you've been dazzled by or something that really stuck with you?
So many things, but one of them is so bizarre and extraordinary. The heads up was Will Reinwick's choice of the week. It's the butcher shop. Did any of you see that? Oh my gosh. It's so Sweeney Todd with a smile.
Sarah, what about you? What has stuck with you or
I mean, I love the winter show because I think your word to describe it, Michelle, is a festival is like they should coin that. It's very true in the sense that it is such a collection of so many different types of decorative craft and art that but if I had to, it's hard to choose your favorite child, but I would say the ones that really stuck out for me this year, I try to look for pieces that are using a technique that I've never seen before. Um, so at Cove Landing, and also there's a beautiful mirror. I was walking through with Jacqueline earlier and showing her the ones I really like. But there's also a Venetian mirror from the 1600s that, those techniques are a master class in craft. And I know we overuse that word, but just technique, because those trades are dying. And to see them at a fair like this, you can really appreciate the detailing, but just the time alone to make something. And there are a few fairs in the world that actually I think do this well, and the winter show is really one of the best. And I love walking through, and I encourage everyone to talk to the dealers, really get to know them, because my world began before the internet for learning about antiques. And I had an amazing mentor that basically every day we would just go from dealer to dealer and talk all day long. I thought this is the best job in the world. I get to just talk to people. But I got to know New York that way. And that world sadly doesn't really exist anymore except here at the fair. And so I think it's amazing that it goes the length that it does, because you really can spend time with each dealer, and they're excited to talk to you, like really excited. So take that time and learn about the pieces that they brought and why, because they brought them for a reason. And each one I learn a different thing about. So I can't really pick one, but I do really love talking to all the dealers and learning about, where they're from and why they chose the things that they did. So I encourage everyone to do that.
No, I think it's so great to come back multiple times too, because you just see different things, even walking one way up the row versus the other way, something else might pop out at you. Daniela, were there any favorites that you saw? Or
Always. I love the winter show. My partner and I came last year, and we've like literally talked about it like weekly until this year again. I like resent the saying they don't make them like they used to, but like here you realize it's really true. And there's so much like beautiful, intricate detail in so much of the jewelry and the furniture here. But my work is so much about the intersection of craft and utility. And I'm always trying to make something that is not for a singular occasion, but rather it lives and exists for multiple purposes in your life and your wardrobe. I often say, like, the same blazer you buy to wear for a wedding, you could wear with a pair of jeans, so that you never look at your wardrobe and don't see yourself in it in all of these different versions of your life. They're all you. But then I think that's why I'm so totally charmed by something that like has such a specific purpose, like a thing that's just for a thing. Like we just opened this beautiful little Cartier um, vessel that was on a necklace that had like a little pick in it, and it's like just one little thing that's made just for this very specific design. Or Rose Uniacke um, has a gorgeous display in the show with the most amazing card table, and the card table has pieces that are integrated into the legs of the table, but they flip out and they're just individual ashtrays, but the table itself flips over and has like an amazing secondary surface. So just a thing that's like just for one thing and an individual
yeah,
thing is I've said thing so many times, but a thing for a thing just is
Yeah.
like the most charming
it's a great thing. Yeah.
thing.
And for you, what was your
I thought for me, what was so special about this is the vast, vast range. I read that the New York Times calls the winter show the mini Met because of things from antiquity, from thousands of years ago to hyper, hyper contemporary. And I feel like at other fairs, they tend to be, well, not like that. I mean, I love Frieze, I love, and Matthew's in the book, but I love Frieze, I love Art Basel and all that. And there's a little bit of a range, but nothing like this at all. And so to be exposed to antiquities, there's one exhibition that's historical documents, like constitutional documents, which are particularly close, maybe to my heart anyway, right now, maybe a lot of people's, but really, really special things that you're just walking by, looking at Rosiniak, another favorite, but you're just walking by and then suddenly see something you just wouldn't really be exposed to at all if you're not a specialist. So I loved how the Winter Show is bringing together all these very specialized people into one great. Well, Michelle, is stirring the pot all together. It's quite exciting. And the conversation that you can imagine between these very, very different time periods and objects, I thought that was what was so fascinating.
If I can interject, I think one of the really, to your point about it being like a mini Met, I think that's part of what makes it so special is that these are like museum quality pieces or pieces that should be behind a showcase, and you can like touch them and try them on and interact with them, and it really makes you realize like these are not just pieces for show, but they were created for with utility or really intricate design or for people to live with.
Absolutely, and I love thinking about where they get to go home and live next. I'd love to open this up to the audience for questions, if anyone. Yes.
Your work often feels both ancient and very contemporary. When you begin a new project, what helps you decide which influences to let in and which ones to keep out?
That's a very good question. The answer is I don't know. Again, you're talking about stirring the pot. I feel I've been making things a long time since childhood. And I dip in and I try to approach the situation because they're all different. And sometimes that requires a whole new additive, a new ingredient, which is what I'm doing here on Park Avenue. I have not worked with the ancient forest before. I'm channeling our wonderful Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. This is the forest primeval. I'm thinking of the sacred groves in beautiful English folk songs. My favorite is the ash grove, and bringing that, I've never done it. So um, I'm channeling Guy La Liberté, the magician who was Cirque du Soleil. I did a commission for him where I tried something that was so unique to my practice, as they would say, that I told him he could have his money back if it didn't work. That was a first and a last, but it worked. We are all on this continuum, and we all stand on so many shoulders of makers, like you said, that are now gone, but in Donor Studio, we're still um, Neolithic. You know, we're banging, we're pounding, we're squeezing, we're getting raw materials. And I don't know if that answers you, but
We're excited to see that come to life. It'll be really amazing. Do we have more questions?
My question would be, I'm in a similar situation when it comes to integrating my artistic skills to maybe something business, e-commerce, for example. So my question is, how did you guys navigate through that integration, and how did you guys stay resilient in your industry, whatever you may be in?
what happens is as you manifest your ideas and they come to life, they're alive. Other people participate then. Something that's alive, attracts life. And you end up with what I call an I thou dialogue. And so that is what has sustained me. And I know from all of your talk, the conversations with people, we are like termites and ants. We could not live alone. We have community, and it is here, and this city really literally right now is vibrating from it. You can feel it. You will exude your creative ideas, and it won't fall down. It will rise up, and it will be met.
I think there's been a really great theme of community in this conversation, and I think it's really important. My work has definitely thrived over the years because of the community that I've built around the brand, but also built for the brand. So I think if you have a strong vision for what you are building, but also who you're building it for, surround yourself by those people, integrate yourself into their lives. It's important to it sounds trite, but believe in yourself and believe that what you're doing has a purpose, but also let it be porous so that people's need for it can penetrate that, and that's how it'll expand and grow and be seen. Because that for me, there were many years where just one customer was enough because it was that told me somebody wants it. And like I said, that turned into two, three, 1,000, thousands. And so that's how it became enough. So if you believe in it, don't let there be noise of what other people are doing. Let the community be a goldfish in your fishbowl. Let that be big enough for you, and you'll grow out of that fishbowl into a pond and into an ocean.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today in such a wonderful audience. And thank you for our panelists. It's been really inspiring and energizing, and I'm ready to go back out into the snow. And thank you. It's really amazing. So thank you.